Okay, let's unpack this. This is the kind of news that doesn't just grab headlines. It really shifts the global chessboard, doesn't it? Demands a closer look.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the dramatic escalation of the Iran-Israel conflict back in June 2025.
hmm
And what's really striking here, I think, is that this wasn't just, another flare-up. It marked a major direct confrontation.
A definite shift.
Yeah, moving way beyond the proxy warfare we've kind of become used to. And then complicating everything, you had direct U.S. military intervention.
Right. That was huge.
So our mission today, really, is to cut through some of the noise, give you the essential nuggets, and try to understand how decades of history led them to this critical point, so you'll walk away well-informed with a deeper grasp of what really happened and, importantly, why it matters.
Sounds good.
So what struck me first, looking at the reports, was just how fast it all escalated. From those, proxy skirmishes we mentioned to direct hits. June 2025, that was the point, right? The direct confrontation.
Yeah.
Can you maybe break down those initial moments for us? What exactly happened?
Yeah, it was an incredibly intense and rapid escalation.
Yeah.
Definitely marked a significant departure from, the previous patterns.
Okay.
So Israel launched airstrikes on Iranian targets. Reuters reported a really staggering number, 639 people killed.
Okay.
And Iran, in turn, retaliated. Ballistic missiles, drone attacks, including some pretty significant strikes earlier, actually, in April and October of 2024.
Right, I remember those.
But the immediate catalyst for this new phase of direct exchanges, seems to have been Israel's suspected strike on Iran's consulate in Syria. That was April 1st, 2024.
In Damascus, yeah.
Killed commanders.
Exactly, several Iranian commanders. But the real turning point, the critical moment, came on June 13th, 2025.
Okay, what happened then? That's when Israel conducted a major attack directly on Iran's nuclear program facilities.
The nuclear sites.
Yes. And that attack then prompted Iran to unleash these, barrages of missiles and drones in response. The New York Times, I think they described it as the most intense fighting between the two nations in decades.
Decades, yeah.
And what's really insightful here, I think, is that this immediate direct retaliation, unlike those previous proxy clashes, it signaled a really dangerous shift in the sort of established rules of engagement.
Like the unspoken rules were broken.
Exactly. A new, much more volatile chapter where the red lines are basically being redrawn in real time. Very risky.
So, okay, the conflict goes direct, they're hitting nuclear targets, and then just a week later, bang, the United States steps in.
Yeah.
That feels like a massive game changer.
It absolutely was.
What was their role? What were they trying to achieve?
Well, the U.S. involvement was a hugely significant escalation and, frankly, a highly anticipated one given how tensions had been rising.
Right.
So, on June 21st, 2025, the United States, under President Donald Trump at the time, joined Israel. They struck 3 key Iranian nuclear facilities: Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan.
The big three.
The big 3, yes. President Trump, he publicly called it a very successful attack. The stated aim was clear: disrupt Iran's nuclear program.
Which both the U.S. and Israel see as a major threat.
Precisely, a threat to regional stability. But what's interesting and maybe a bit complicated is that a preliminary U.S. report, which the New York Times cited, indicated that while, the facilities sustained damage, the strikes didn't fully destroy them, not completely.
Okay, so maybe not quite the obliteration initially claimed.
Perhaps not. And, this intervention also has to be seen in the context of the broader U.S. policy.
Countering Iran's influence.
Exactly, countering Iran's regional influence. And that policy had really been strengthened, particularly since the Hamas-led attack on Israel back on October 7th, 2023. That event, by the way, it significantly weakened Iran's proxy network across the region. So, in a way, this direct intervention could be seen as maybe a logical, though definitely risky, next step in what they saw as counter-escalation.
Okay, that makes sense. But given that intensity, the U.S. joining in, hitting nuclear sites, it's actually kind of remarkable how quickly a ceasefire was brokered. Just a few days later, right?
It really was an incredibly rapid turn of events.
How did that even come about, and what happened right after?
Well, it really highlights, I think, the immediate desire on perhaps all sides to de-escalate after staring into that abyss of direct confrontation.
Sort of pulling back from the brink.
Something like that. A fragile ceasefire was brokered on June 24th, 2025, largely by President Trump, it seems, but with mediation help from Qatar and diplomatic engagement from key European powers, too. The UK, France, Germany were involved.
Okay.
And this came after the really, really volatile 24-hour period. Just before the ceasefire, there was an Iranian missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar.
Wow, okay, so direct retaliation against the U.S. too.
Yes, a direct response to that American intervention we just discussed. So things were incredibly tense right up to the moment the ceasefire took hold.
And then,
Yeah.
immediately after.
Well, predictably, both Israel and Iran claimed victory. Standard procedure, almost.
Right.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz even ordered, quote, intense strikes almost immediately, responding to what they alleged were Iranian violations. Iran denied those, of course.
So fragile is the word.
Very fragile. Interestingly, though, Iran's President Pezeshkian, he signaled an openness to nuclear talks, denied ambitions to develop nuclear weapons, said they were willing to resolve issues at the negotiating table.
After the strikes.
After the strikes, yes. It's also worth noting the Europeans had actually tried to head off the U.S. strikes earlier, around June 20th, but those efforts failed at the time.
So this rapid ceasefire, maybe not true de-escalation.
Probably not. I think the speed, coupled with those immediate accusations of violations, it maybe reveals less a resolution and more a mutual recognition of the immediate, perhaps unmanageable costs of continuing that direct conflict.
Like a pause.
A fragile pause, yeah. Highlighting the inherent instability that's still very much there.
So let's talk about those nuclear sites.
Sure.
The U.S. and Israeli strikes targeted them, but you said reports suggest they weren't fully destroyed. What is that partial success, or maybe lack of complete destruction? What does that actually mean for Iran's nuclear capabilities and for any future talks?
It creates a very complex and uncertain situation going forward. You had President Trump initially claiming the strikes obliterated Tehran's capabilities.
Right.
But the conflicting reports suggest, yeah, damage, but not total destruction. In fact, Reuters and the Jerusalem Post were reporting that Iran moved pretty swiftly to replace damaged air defenses.
Okay, so they're already rebuilding, bolstering defenses.
Seems so, which indicates they're digging in, trying to improve their capabilities after the strike. Iran's strategic stance has also been quite clear on the talks front.
Refusal during the fighting.
Yes, they refused to engage in nuclear talks during the active conflict. But, as we mentioned, they did signal openness to negotiations after the ceasefire.
Okay.
And it's really crucial to understand the context here. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, they noted Iran's, quote, unprecedented nuclear progress.
Unprecedented progress. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it largely refers to Iran's rapid accumulation of highly enriched uranium, getting closer to weapons grade, and also advancements in its centrifuge technology. Faster machines, basically.
Which shortens the time they'd need to build a bomb, the breakout time.
Exactly. It significantly shortens that potential breakout time. And that progress was seen as a key driving factor behind Israel's decision to escalate to direct strikes in the first place. That's the core of the tension, really.
Right. It always comes back to the nuclear program.
It seems to, yes.
So to really get our heads around this deep-rooted animosity, we probably need to rewind a bit. Go back in time.
Definitely.
How did these two nations, now locked in this, fierce conflict, how did they interact historically?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't always like this, was it? People talk about it being a real roller coaster.
Oh, absolutely not. It's been a remarkable roller coaster, as you say. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran and Israel actually had quite cordial relations.
Cordial? Yeah.
Yes. Iran was actually the second Muslim-majority country, Turkey was first, to recognize Israel back in 1948.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that early.
Yep. And that recognition really set the stage for significant cooperation for years. We saw collaboration in agriculture and technology, even military training.
Huh. Why? What were the benefits for each side?
Well, there were clear mutual benefits.
Yeah.
For Israel, Iran was seen as this important non-Arab counterweight to the surrounding Arab states that were hostile to Israel.
Okay, the enemy of my enemy sort of thing?
Kinda. And for Iran, under the Shah, they benefited from Israeli technical expertise, agricultural know-how, and also the lucrative oil trade with Israel.
So pragmatic cooperation.
Very pragmatic. However, it's worth noting, even back then, there were underlying tensions. Iran did oppose the UN partition plan for Palestine in 1947, and they opposed Israel's admission to the UN in 1949. So it wasn't perfect harmony, but certainly a working relationship.
Right. But then 1979 happened.
Yes, and everything changed.
Wow.
Dramatically. The Islamic Revolution just transformed relations entirely.
Oh, so?
The new regime under Ayatollah Khomeini swiftly cut all diplomatic ties, famously labeled Israel the Little Satan.
Right, alongside the Great Satan, the U.S.
Exactly. And they literally handed the Israeli embassy building in Tehran over to the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO.
Wow, that's a statement.
A huge statement. And from that point on, Iran began actively, strategically supporting anti-Israel groups. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Go that network.
Consolidating them into what they started calling an axis of resistance. Basically, a coordinated network aimed squarely at countering Israeli influence and presence right across the region.
Okay. And Israel's response?
Well, Israel, in turn, didn't just sit back. They conducted covert operations, assassinations of Iranian nuclear scientists, for example.
Right, those targeted killings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps most famously, the Stuxnet cyber attack back in 2010.
Stuxnet. That was huge news. Targeted the nuclear program, right?
Exactly. A really sophisticated digital weapon designed specifically to physically damage Iran's uranium enrichment centrifuges at Natanz. A clear attempt to set back their nuclear ambitions through cyber means.
So for decades, it was this shadow war. Covert actions, proxies.
Largely, yes. Covert proxy conflicts. Iran backing groups fighting Israel or its allies. Israel striking Iranian assets or personnel, often in places like Syria. It was a long, simmering conflict fought mostly below the threshold of direct state-on-state war.
Until recently.
And that Hamas-led attack on October 7th, 2023, and Israel's huge military response in Gaza and elsewhere that really strained Iran's regional influence, weakened its proxy network, as we discussed.
And that set the stage for 2025.
It seems to have directly set the stage for this dramatic, direct escalation in 2025 that we've just been talking about. The dynamics shifted.
Okay, so that brings us back to the present, or near present. We have this very, very fragile ceasefire in place after this period of intense direct conflict. What does this all mean going forward? What are the biggest challenges now for de-escalation? And what about other players in the region?
Well, that June 24th, 2025 ceasefire, it really is, at best, a temporary pause. A breather.
Doesn't sound very stable.
It isn't. The underlying issues, particularly Iran's nuclear program and the deep, deep mutual distrust between the two nations, those persist. They continue to drive the conflict.
So what about talks? Diplomacy?
Well, diplomatic efforts, like those by the European powers and Qatar, they might pave the way for renewed nuclear talks. Maybe something resembling the old 2015 deal, the JCPOA.
The Iran nuclear deal.
Oh, exactly, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. But, and this is a big but, President Trump's prior withdrawal from that very agreement back in 2018, that hugely complicates any prospect for a similar deal now. There's a history there.
Right. Trust is low on all sides.
Extremely low. And meanwhile, as we saw, Iran seems committed to rebuilding its damaged air defenses. Their continued support for proxy groups like Hezbollah and Hamas suggests that, ongoing challenges are almost certainly ahead. It's not like they've changed their fundamental strategy.
And the U.S. role got in the middle almost.
The U.S. role will be absolutely critical. They'll need to perform this difficult balancing act, maintaining military support for Israel, while also pushing diplomatic efforts to try and stabilize the region. It's a tough position.
What about other countries nearby? Turkey? The Gulf states?
Well, some regional actors, like Turkey and the UAE, they've expressed support for peace, for de-escalation.
Yeah.
But you also have Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's very clear stated determination to eliminate Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities entirely.
Which sounds like it could undermine any ceasefire.
It absolutely could. That kind of maximalist goal makes finding common ground very difficult. The international community, the UN and others, they keep urging restraint. But the sheer complexity of this conflict, those deep-rooted historical animosities, it makes any kind of lasting peace seem, elusive right now.
Yeah, elusive feels like the right word. So, okay, we've taken a real deep dive today into this 2025 Iran-Israel conflict.
You're right.
We've looked at the dramatic escalation, the pretty unexpected direct U.S. involvement, the fragile ceasefire that followed, and crucially, the decades of really complex history that brought them to this critical point. It's just so clear, isn't it, that this is a multi-layered issue.
Definitely.
And understanding that historical context, from that surprising pre-1979 cooperation to the really profound post-revolution hostility, it's just absolutely crucial for grasping the current crisis and, where it might go next.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, thinking about everything we've discussed, it maybe raises an important question for you, the listener, to consider.
Okay.
Given the, let's say, partial success of those nuclear strikes, and the incredibly deep-seated distrust between these nations that we've seen spans decades, what do you think is the single most significant obstacle to achieving a truly lasting peace in the region? Is it the nuclear program? Is it the historical baggage? Is it the proxies? And maybe think about how different international approaches stall, like, more military pressure, more diplomacy, economic incentives, or sanctions. How might those different paths either help or maybe even hinder the path towards some kind of stability? Something to mull over.